Night tonight, that rain will clear by late afternoon across East Anglia and the southeast, and then clear spells for most of England and Wales, but a lot of showers will keep coming in across Scotland and Northern Ireland. It will be a cooler night, certainly across the south. Temperatures down into single figures, staying at 9 or 10 across towns and cities further north, where there will still be a pretty strong wind blowing. A blustery day then on Thursday, not as windy as today, but some good spells of sunshine to come tomorrow for most of southern England, the Midlands, eastern England and much of eastern Scotland. The day's going to be dry and bright, but further west there will be a lot of showers coming in, parts of Wales, especially Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Still breezy, as I said, so again feeling cooler than these temperatures would suggest, but generally a little bit milder on Thursday compared to today, and staying gusty with further wet weather slipping south on Friday.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning. Thank you very much for joining me, Bev Turner, on GB News. This morning we are on radio, TV and online. It is a huge day at the Tory party conference, as in about an hour we're going to be seeing Liz Truss on stage to set out her ambitious vision for the country. I will have in the studio with me expert businessman and Brexit pioneer Ben Habib here. We're going to analyse what Liz Truss has to say, but I'm sure you can do a very good job of doing that as well. So email me gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first of all, here are the vital news headlines with Rosie.
A very good morning. Just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister will say that the disruption caused by her plan to grow the economy will be worth it when she addresses Conservative Party members today. In her first conference speech as leader, Liz Truss will insist she has the right plans for reform, claiming the government can no longer delay efforts to boost economic growth. Ms Truss will be hoping the speech will restore morale following a U-turn over tax. The Foreign Secretary James Cleverly is optimistic for her speech, but told us the party and cabinet need to support her.
That is what she is doing in government, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to rally around her, because that is the right agenda for government. That's what's going to support the British people. That is what's going to make sure that we are successful in the future and at the next general election, and that, as I say, you know, having these kind of side conversations isn't useful, and it doesn't really serve the British people.
Rail passengers will face more disruption to their journeys today because of another strike. It's It's members of the union ASLEF and the Transport Salaried Staff Association who are walking out in their long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. The ASLEF General Secretary Mick Whelan says the industrial action will continue until the government intervenes. Police forces across England and Wales have agreed to send an officer to every home burglary. It's part of new measures to ensure more crimes are being solved and more offenders are prosecuted. The National Police Chiefs Council said chief constables will work to ensure the approach is implemented as soon as is practically possible. A man accused of trying to harm the late Queen after being caught with a crossbow at Windsor Castle last Christmas is expected to enter police today. Jaswant Singh Charlie will appear at the Old Bailey later to face 3 charges, including an offence under the Treason Act. The 20-year-old's also charged with making a threat to kill the Queen and having a loaded crossbow in a public place. A 23-year-old Irishman has died whilst fighting in Ukraine. Rory Mason from County Meath had been fighting near the Russian border for Ukraine's International Legion. Well, meanwhile, the Russian President Putin has signed a law legalising the so-called annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions. That's according to Russian media. Well, the European Parliament president said that sham referendums would not change the status of these areas, who remain an independent part of independent Ukraine. On the ground in Ukraine, they do continue to make gains in offensive operations along both the northeastern and southern fronts. The Professor of International Politics, Scott Lucas, says Putin's losing the war.
It means that everything since February that Putin tried to accomplish is now being undone, compounded by problems within Russia that we can discuss. But secondly, Ukraine now is on the verge of being able to move into territory that the Russians have controlled since 2014 through their proxies. That includes what we call the Donbass region in the east, and it includes Crimea, this big peninsula that Putin just seized, that he just annexed, without really a fight back from anyone.
Member of the Ukrainian Parliament, Alexei Goncharo, says Putin could consider using nuclear weapons if he's desperate.
Because on every possible crossroad, Putin chooses the worst possible track. And if he will continue to do this, we are moving to the possibility that he could be so desperate that he can realistically consider this option. And that's why we need to act now to prevent it.
The EU are going to use satellites to prevent attacks on energy infrastructure. The Commissioner says the recent acts of sabotage against Nord Stream gas pipelines show how vulnerable the energy infrastructure is and that it needs protecting. Von der Leyen says it's in the interest of all Europeans to heighten security.
We will make best use of our satellite surveillance capacity. We have these satellites in place. We have the capacity to do the surveillance, to detect potential threats. So this is also a matter of prevention and awareness.
Elon Musk has offered to buy Twitter for a second time. The social media giant confirmed it plans to accept a deal worth £38.3 billion. The SpaceX founder originally pulled out of the purchase in July, saying the number of fake or spam accounts on the platform caused a problem. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it develops. Now, back to Beverly.
A very good morning to you. You are with GB News with me, Bev Turner, on your TV, radio and online. It is a massive day at the Tory party conference as we're going to hear what Liz Truss has to say. She's going to be pacing up and down backstage right now, reading her notes and working out how to win you over. We hear that she will claim that disruption might not be popular, but it is inevitable to grow the economy for everyone. We'll work out what that means. She's also expected to attack what she calls an anti-growth coalition who oppose her plans. But what measures do you want to hear the Prime Minister set out today? Suella Braverman's speech will be hard to beat, won't it? So what can the Prime Minister do to turn around the Tory polling? Get in touch and let me know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And talking of Suella Braverman, we're going to look at what she said in more detail. Immigration, crime, policing, more PCs, less PC, she said, absolutely nailing many popular themes, but with a dose of common sense and warnings that change won't be easy. We'll take a good look at what she said as well in some detail. We've got all of that coming up and much more across the programme. You can get in touch with your views, as usual, on gbviews at gbnews.uk. To our top story this morning, the Prime Minister will use the speech today to defend her economic strategy, arguing that disruption is the price of success. In her address at the end of the Conservative Party conference, which has been dominated, let's say, frankly, by some internal division, she'll also attack what she calls an anti-growth coalition. This morning, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, defended the Prime Minister and her plans for government and said that many people at conference had faith in her.
What I have seen whenever the Prime Minister comes to an event here at conference, huge reception, really passionate and positive reception, because people can see she is getting on with the things that she said she was going to get on with. Cutting taxes for 30 million people, investing in the UK, supporting people who are concerned about those energy price rises. So that's what the Prime Minister is focused on. The party, I think, is responding well to that as a whole, and there will always be some people that are critical, but that's politics. I think people instinctively know that the British people want to see us focused on them. They want to see us discussing how to get wage growth in the UK economy, invest in the parts of the country where they live. That's what they want us to do. I think that's what we should be focused on. I know that's what the Prime Minister is focused on, and I think you'll hear that in the speech that she's going to give a little bit later on today.
James Cleverly there. So let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood now. Good morning, Tom. Hi, Tom. We heard some good speeches yesterday. Therese Coffey, not quite as gripping necessarily as Suella Braverman, but also pretty good. Liz Truss is going to have to deliver an absolute belter today, isn't she, to end this conference on a more positive note for her?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's hard to overstate how much, frankly, is riding on this delivery of this speech from Liz Truss. Her first, of course, as party leader, her first as Prime Minister to address a Conservative Party conference, a conference that, frankly, has been riddled with division, that has seen a seismic U-turn, that has seen unease on the floor of the conference, and also is feeling a little bit thin on the ground today. Now, as I sit here in the plum spot that GBNews has on the floor of this conference hall in Birmingham, people are queuing for Liz Truss's speech. They've been queuing from very early this morning, but ultimately it's fair to say there are fewer people here at this conference than there were for the previous few days. Now, ultimately most of that is due to the train strike that is on today. Many people left last night, but Liz Truss will have a job on her hands to convince those who have chosen to stay in Birmingham this morning, to try and convince them that her plan is the right one, that she has the gravitas, that she has the conviction, and indeed that she has the plan to take the country through what is undoubtedly a very turbulent time. No one can deny the international situation that many countries face. Of course, the United States of America is currently in recession, having seen 2 quarters of negative growth. Interest rates are rising around the world, and the currencies of many countries, not least the Indian rupee, or indeed the Japanese yen, or the European euro, as well as the pound, have devalued relatively against the dollar as well. These are very difficult times in which any Prime Minister could take the reins, could take to the stage and try and lead a party forward. We've been speaking so much over the last 4 days about how it's very tricky to take the reins of this party, how there are so many people who feel miffed to not be in the government, how there are former chief whips now on the back benches, how people like Michael Gove or Grant Shapps or indeed Gavin Williamson and Rishi Sunak even may well be on manoeuvres. But frankly, this is Liz Truss's chance in just under 2 hours' time to take those reins, to say that frankly she is in charge, that this is the way that things are being done, and hopefully inject some humility in there too. There is, as I said at the start, it is hard to overstate just how important this speech is for Liz Truss. It can in some ways be seen as a make or break moment, her chance to reset what has undoubtedly been such a turbulent time in her beginning as Prime Minister in those first few weeks. This is her chance to, in her own words, define herself for what is frankly quite a divided party.
OK, thank you, Tom. Tom Harwood there. I bet he's been having some late nights and some early mornings. Ben Habib, he's working so hard. Well done, Tom. I bet you've barely slept. I am joined in the studio for the next 2 hours by former Brexit Party MEP. Ben, in one word, has this Tory conference been successful for the party, would you say, or not?
Well, if you listen to all the media reporting, it hasn't been successful. But in a sense, I would have scrapped the conference, frankly, if I'd been Liz Truss. I wouldn't have had the conference.
Labour and Tory, they both should have been scrapped.
They should both be scrapped. Everyone through August was saying what a protracted leadership contest that was, how the country needed to be governed. Then we had, of course, the Queen's funeral. That took a week out of government time. And then we adjourned for, another 2 weeks to do this. And I would have cancelled all of it. And in a sense, what Liz really needs to do now is block the noise out of her ears. I agree with Tom to some extent in that this is an important speech, but it's not pivotal to Liz Truss. People like Michael Gove have calculated that the Conservatives are going to lose the next election. People like Michael Gove recognise that their time in frontline politics is over. So they're going to be difficult. What she needs to do is call their bluff. Blank out the noise, ignore people like Gove, who have turned into bitter, twisted old politicians, and just do what she said she would, which is deliver, deliver, deliver. And if you look at the mini-budget, it was the beginnings of that. Everyone hijacked the debate over the mini-budget because of the cut in the higher rate of tax. But actually, every other measure she announced that day was good for business, good for the working class, good for the middle class. And that's how you get growth. So she needs to blank out this noise. She needs to be robust. She needs to be resolved. She needs to lead the country. And she needs to deliver the agenda on which she was appointed Prime Minister.
The irony is, Ben, of course, that she said they wanted to renege on that promise to reduce the top rate of tax because it was a distraction.
Yeah.
The irony, of course, is then going back on it became an even bigger distraction.
And that's the danger with you turning as a Prime Minister. Let's just put that 45% tax cut into perspective. It amounted to £2 billion a year out of a total package of tax cuts and waivers of tax increases that Rishi Sunak wanted to bring in of about 45 billion. It was a rounding error. It was a drop in the ocean compared to the cap on energy prices, which was potentially up to £150 billion. But everyone focused in on it. People like Gove knew they could make political capital out of it, and they attacked the Prime Minister on it.
What should she do with people like Gove? What can you do in politics? You were an MEP. You're working now, I think, with the Reform Party a little bit, are you?
Well,
peripherally.
Well, Richard's a good friend. And,
yes, Richard Tice, who leads that up. He has ambitions to be disruptive. But what does a politician do with, a Prime Minister do with politicians like Michael Gove, who are just needling away in the background and being a pest?
She has to stare him down. She's not going to win Michael Gove over. She's not going to win all those parliamentarians who are now her detractors because they wanted Rishi Sunak to win. Those parliamentarians who believe in Treasury orthodoxy, who believe in what they define as compassionate conservatism, for which you can read large borrowing, large state, absence of growth. And she's recognised that that doesn't work, and she just needs to call their bluff. The question now for the parliamentary party is, do they want to rally around Liz Truss, or do they want to be obliterated at the next election? It's a Mexican standoff between her and the disruptors, and she just needs to hold firm.
Of course, the majority of her MPs voted for Sunak to become Prime Minister. It went to the Conservative Party members. The majority of those voted for her. But that does leave her in a very vulnerable position, doesn't it?
It does in the parliamentary party. And we're almost back to 2019. Do you remember when we had the sort of People versus Parliament?
Yeah.
And again, we've got people like Gove and Simon Hoare and others who they're not proposing and championing the agenda of the people. The people want growth. The people, I'm sure, see through all the noise in the political arena at the moment and recognise that energy bills have been capped, recognise that the basic rate of tax was cut, that it's good for business to wind back those reforms on IR35. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Those really difficult reforms that Boris Johnson brought in that captured so many more people in the tax net.
That's right, yeah.
You know, she wound those back. It got no airtime.
Yeah.
But people understand it. The electorate understand what's going on because they feel it in their pockets. So what she needs to do is just hold her nerve for 6 months, let her policies bed in, let the benefits of her policies manifest themselves in the economy, and things will automatically come right for her.
She is a human being. At the end of the day, it's easy to forget when you have a Prime Minister that they are experiencing normal human emotions. And I think as a performer on the stage, which is what she has to be in less than an hour's time, she always looks like she performs better when she's feeling confident. So in the hustings, when it was clear that the party members were on board, she rose to the challenge of that. I worry that she's going to go on that stage in less than an hour, being a little bit shaken by everything that's happened this week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And in a sense, Tom's right, isn't he? It's going to be a test of her, at least her visible resolve. And if she can get up there and she can be upbeat and she can be optimistic and she can, you know...
style it out, as the kids might say. Style it out, Ben, confidently.
But, you know, she should be able to be confident because her agenda is a good one.
Yeah.
You know, people want growth. People want an aspirational future for their children. We don't want more state interference. We want more... We want to keep more of what we earn. We want to make the decisions with our money. You know, if you go back to... I know you're a big... believer in lockdown not having been the right policy. But if you go back to lockdown, it was the most interventionist state policy in all of history. Literally, the country was shut down and the government printed money. So for people like Gove now to talk about fiscal prudence, when that policy cost the Exchequer £500 billion and he's fussing over a £2 billion tax cut, it's just disingenuous in the extreme.
Yeah. You know what this conference has allowed us to do, and I agree with you that maybe the logic of keeping it on is not there, but what it has allowed us to do is to have a good look at some of the team that she has brought on board and see them on stage and see what they have to offer. They've set out their stall. We're going to talk about Suella Braverman in a little while, but who else has impressed you this week?
Well, Suella stands head and shoulders, I think, above many politicians because, you know, she's obviously very bright, well-educated, knows her brief, is articulate. And the other thing that I really like about Suella, if I'm not jumping your agenda...
Yeah, no, it's fine.
The other thing I really like about Suella, when Suella's asked a question, you can see her brain in action. You can almost see she's thinking it through. And she's not thinking it through in order to give the answer she thinks the interviewer wants to hear. She's thinking it through to make sure that she has absolutely got it right, that she's telling the truth, the whole truth, and she doesn't pull any punches. So a lot of people didn't like her speech yesterday, but it was absolutely from the heart, and she said it as it was. And she's bang on. And again, the electorate will appreciate and understand this. She's bang on when she says we've got to stop illegal migration across the channel.
And when you say people didn't like it, she knows her audience because she even preempted it in the speech by saying, The Guardian is going to hate what I'm saying. The Lib Dems are going to go into meltdown, she said. Who else did she mention on that? There was a few more left-leaning... Well, the Labour Party, she said, will hate what I have to say. So she's very clever because she preempts it. Yeah. She does face up to the fact that what she says is not going to be popular with everybody, but it will be popular with a lot of Tory voters, I can tell you that.
It will. And a lot of the red wall seats, don't misunderstand those seats.
Good point.
You know, they want libertarian policies. They want the channel illegal migration to stop. You know, they see these people in their towns being treated better than they're treated. You know, there's a big... This compassionate conservatism is a Cameroonian kind of invention which has to stop. It's not where the electorate is.
Yeah.
And Boris Johnson, what Boris Johnson got so right was that he understood the electorate were against Parliament back in 2019. It was Parliament versus the people. And he got into the people's psyche. He understood it, he promoted it, he championed it. Sadly, he then didn't deliver it. And now Liz is having a go at delivering the manifesto that the people want.
Yeah, OK. Right, thanks, Ben. Great start. Right, we've got to take a quick break, but we're going to be talking about another of yesterday's speeches, Health Secretary Therese Coffey. Apparently, the audience needed some because she sent them to sleep. But we're going to have a look at that in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. An area of rain moves east, accompanied by strong winds. Brighter skies follow, but further showers for many areas, particularly towards the northwest. Low pressure in charge at the moment, that low pressure sitting towards Iceland, and a weather front is currently crossing the country. Now that's containing some persistent rain, a lot of cloud as well, and it's accompanied by gusty winds as it pushes into the Midlands, southern parts of England, East Anglia and the southeast by the afternoon. It does brighten up towards the north and the west, but a fair number of showers following and some more persistent rain at times for the likes of northern England and southwest Scotland. Feeling fresher behind the front, but actually it's relatively mild ahead of it. Temperatures falling away as that front crosses the country because it is a cold front. It's introducing cooler air. As we head into the evening then, clearer skies follow that area of rain. And actually for much of England and Wales, it is a largely clear and dry night. The winds starting to ease, and in some sheltered spots, it's going to turn chillier compared with the last couple of nights. Temperatures into the mid or even low single figures. But for Scotland, for the far north of England and for Northern Ireland, it stays showery overnight. It stays breezy as well, and those showers continue during Thursday morning. There'll be further showers pushing into North Wales and northwest England, perhaps some more persistent rain at times as well. Towards the south and the southeast, it stays largely dry with some sunny spells and feeling warm in that sunshine, 19 Celsius, but cooler further northwest where we've got those showers coming in and that gusty wind as well. Some more persistent rain affecting southern Scotland, northern England for a time later Thursday, and some very lively rainfall pushing into the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by rather gusty winds as well by the end of the day. The weather stays very changeable on Friday with rain and showers in many places, a little drier for many as we start the weekend.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on GB News. It's a big day party conference. Theresa May will be giving her speech in less than an hour. Now, even though everyone at the party conference appears to be trying to stay positive, there are rumours that Conservative supporters are, you guessed it, lamenting the loss of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Can this be true? Well, our reporter, Alice Porter, is in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Boris Johnson's constituency. Alice, what have people been saying to you there?
Hi there, good morning. Well, I've been here so many times over the last 6 months or so getting people's reactions to the various shenanigans going on with Boris Johnson, such as Partygate and things like that. And generally speaking, there seems to be a high degree of loyalty from people here to Boris Johnson. But
Alice,
whether they'll
I'm
continue
so
to be
sorry.
loyal to Liz Truss is another matter.
Oh, sorry, Alice, carry on. We think that Liz Truss was coming out a little bit early, but she's changed us. She's messing us all around. She's doing exactly what Ben Habib said, which is take ownership of the situation. She's owning us right now. Carry on, Alice. I'm very sorry.
Not at all. She's a Prime Minister. I guess she can steal the attention. No, I was just saying that just because people in Uxbridge have been loyal to Boris Johnson doesn't mean they're going to be loyal to Liz Truss, because we're seeing quite different policies from the two Prime Ministers. So, for example, we saw national insurance, the rise, come up under Boris Johnson, but that's been reversed. That we saw that in the mini budget. And then yesterday at the Tory party conference, Liz Truss did not confirm that benefits would go up in line with inflation, which was very much contradicting what Boris Johnson had said. So we've got Conservative voters here at Uxbridge who may have different feelings towards the two different Prime Ministers. So I was out and about speaking with voters about how they felt about the two Prime Ministers, and this is what they had to say.
I wish they hadn't pushed Boris out. I think he's hit the ground running from day one, and he hasn't really been given a chance to actually just be Prime Minister without all this Brexit and COVID and everything else in Ukraine. So I hope he gets a chance to have another go.
I think she's really reliant on her cabinet. I do miss, Boris Johnson. He had a lot more support behind him.
Don't basically miss Boris Johnson. I don't think Liz is doing a better job. Because already, I think as soon as she came up, they're saying I think in billions we're in debt already. As soon as she came in. I think she's trying to help, but I don't think she's going to last for long.
Yeah, he did a few things wrong, and a lot of people but he did a lot of things right. And yes, I miss him a lot.
What do you dislike about what Liz Truss is doing at the moment?
I think she's for the rich and not for your middle class people.
He's been sacked from every job he's ever had for lying, and although I think that from an integrity perspective, Liz Truss probably isn't like that, I don't think she's the right person to lead the country.
Do you think Uxbridge and South Ruislip could vote Labour in the next election?
I think that there are very many places in the country, including here, that would absolutely have a bigger turnaround.
Well, there you go. Some of the people in Uxbridge speaking to me yesterday. And I think that final lady there gave a very interesting point there about whether seats like this that have been traditionally Tory could vote differently, because we've got a general election in just around 18 months' time. It's not very long. And if you look at the latest polling, say, from YouGov, they're suggesting that Labour is significantly ahead of the Tories. And where would that leave a seat like this? Because in 2017, Boris Johnson only got a very small majority of just over 5,000 votes, which was in fact the smallest majority by any sitting Prime Minister since 1924. And with the cost of living crisis continuing to be a problem for so many people in this country, whether this will continue to be a safe Tory seat, we'll have to see.
Thank you, Alice. Thanks so much. Alice Porter there. In Uxbridge, Ben Habib and I watching that. Now, Ben, how do people find it in their hearts to just forgive Boris Johnson over and over and over again?
It's extraordinary. I mean, Boris has this fantastic ability to connect, doesn't he? And he can speak brilliantly well, and he can connect at the highest level, and he can connect with the working class. He's a phenomenal politician. But sadly, he is not a leader. No. He doesn't have a vision. And actually, if you analyse what he did in office, he didn't deliver much, if anything. He certainly didn't get Brexit done. I mean, I could write a thesis on how he failed to really deliver Brexit. But the country thinks he has delivered it. Boris Johnson really was more of continuity, compassionate conservatism, as I defined earlier on in the programme. That's all he was. And he didn't really have a plan for the United Kingdom. A true Brexiteer, if he had been a true Brexiteer, would have wanted to genuinely take back control. And taking back control means ditching EU legislation, means charting an independent path for the United Kingdom for the benefit of British citizens. He didn't do that. He signed us up into a very close working relationship with the EU, and as we know, he threw Northern Ireland under a bus. And that, for me, is unforgivable. So I can't forgive Boris Johnson. And I know the square where Alice was standing. I know that very well, because in the run-up to the general election in 2019, I campaigned a bit there, and I was trying to convince Nigel to let me stand against Boris Johnson.
For the Brexit Party? For
the Brexit Party. I convinced Nigel Farage to let me stand against Boris, because he had a very slim majority. And I thought I just might be able to knock Boris off his
And how history would have been different then if you'd been allowed to do that.
I know, I wouldn't have been elected, but I may have taken his majority.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they would have had to, you know, it would have been embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
And I felt the need to do that then, because I knew the deal that he was trying to push down our throats as Brexit wasn't Brexit.
Well, if our viewers are anything to go by, they would have voted for you. You're very popular with GB News viewers. I'll tell you what some of you have been saying. Helen says that Ben has hit the nail on the head as far as Gove is about. Well done, Mr. Habib, for saying it as it is. Wendy says you are absolutely spot on. The troublemakers like Gove should be ignored. Truss has an exciting agenda and a focused mind, and she needs to keep going. Barbara says, Ben Habib sorts it all out for me. Should we just swap places, I think? With intelligent interviewing, so wise, forward-looking and calming. I'm glad you're using him. Thank you, Barbara. It was my idea. I love him too. Rita says it's the private sector which pays for the NHS, schools, etc. And the problem is that the public sector have been put on a pedestal for far too long. It's time the country woke up and accepted that growth is needed. And we're going to be talking about the NHS in just a moment. Marianne said, I hate to say it, but the Tories are shooting themselves in the foot. Tory MPs may want a different leader, as they did with Boris, but it would serve them well to remember that it is the people who elect MPs. They cannot vote for themselves. I don't know about you, Ben, but when I hear Alice Porter there say, you know, we could have a general election in as little as 18 months, my mind starts to race forward as to what that could look like and who can do what. Do you think it is realistic to think that with a 30-point lead now that Labour have in the polls, they have a chance of winning that election in 18 months?
Well, it's their election to lose now.
It is now, you're right.
It? And in a sense, Liz has nothing to lose by sticking to her guns. She has everything to gain and nothing to lose. If I were her, I wouldn't call the election before November 2024. I'd give myself as much time as possible for my policies to bed down. And as I was saying earlier, she should just block out the noise, deliver her policies. And if the economy comes right, it's all about the economy, stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know a lot about that as well, don't you, as a businessman? We'll talk about that as well. Ben's here with me until 12 o'clock. We are waiting for Liz Truss to take to the stage at the Tory party conference at some point in the next half an hour or so. And we're also going to be looking at Suella Braverman's speech and how she was talking tough on the migrant crossings. Let me know what you think as well. GB Views at gbnews.uk, otherwise known as the Ben Habib Fan Club. Before all that, let's have a look at this morning's news with Rosie.
A very good morning, 10:35. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Now, the Prime Minister will shortly say that the disruption caused by her plan to grow the economy will be worth it when she addresses Conservative Party members in about half an hour's time. In her first conference speech as leader, Liz Truss will insist she's got the right plans for reform, claiming the government can no longer delay efforts to boost economic growth. Ms Truss will be hoping the speech will restore morale following a U-turn over tax. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, told us the party and Cabinet needs to support her.
That is what she is doing in government, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to rally around her, because that is the right agenda for government. That's what's going to support the British people. That is what's going to make sure that we are successful in the future and at the next general election. And that, as I say, you know, having these kind of side conversations isn't useful, and it doesn't really serve the British people.
Irishman Rory Mason's been killed fighting in Ukraine. The 23-year-old from County Meath had been engaged in a battle near the Russian border. His father, Rob, said the family was enormously proud of his courage, determination and selflessness by enlisting to support the country. There's more travel disruption for rail passengers, with the ASLEF and TSSA union members striking again over pay, jobs and conditions. The ASLEF General Secretary Mick Whelan says the industrial action will continue until the government intervenes. Police forces across England and Wales have agreed to send an officer to every home burglary. It's part of new measures to ensure more crimes are being solved and more offenders are prosecuted. The National Police Chiefs Council says chief constables will work to ensure the approach is implemented as soon as practically possible. We're on your TV, online and your DAB+ radio. It's GB News. Shortly, we'll be back to Bev.
Hello, welcome back. This is Bev Turner on GB News, sitting here chatting to Ben Habib, putting the world to rights. It's a big day, Tory party conference, and Liz Truss will be taken to the stage in less than half an hour. Now, A, B, C, D. Ambulances, backlogs, care, doctors and dentists. It's a very clever little kind of mnemonic from Therese Coffey there, but they are the priorities that she's outlined again and again, as she did yesterday. Health and Social Care Secretary, of course, Therese Coffey, gave that speech to the Conservative Party conference yesterday. She also said that the government was speeding up plans to roll out community diagnostic centres and new hospitals. However, the headlines have somewhat taken away from the speech today because there were images of delegates literally falling asleep whilst listening to it. I'm joined now by Chris Snowdon. Good morning, Chris. I don't know about you, but I felt like those headlines were a little unfair. There have been a lot of politicians probably burning the candle at both ends at the Tory party conference. It wasn't necessarily a boring speech. I think it was just that time in the day that we all quite like a nap.
Could well have been. It was a relatively short speech. I watched it earlier. I didn't actually fall asleep during it, nor was it particularly exciting, though it has to be said. It was very much like a speech from any health secretary in my lifetime, really. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference who the health secretary is, or even if it's a Labour or Conservative one, because the problems with the health service are kind of endemic. It's inherently inefficient because it's such an enormous and unaccountable organisation, and people don't have much choice in which hospital they use, which doctor they have, and as a result, you get this, this general attitude, despite the goodwill of many of the people who work for it, you end up with this sclerotic system that doesn't put consumers or patients really first.
Putting your cards on the table, you would, Chris, want to see the whole health system privatised. Correct me if I've got that wrong. And if that is the case, why?
Yeah, I would, yeah. But I mean, it's not something I go on about a great deal because it's never going to happen. And, the NHS is massively cherished in this country because I think people don't really understand how health systems work in other countries where they have much more private provision. But yeah, I mean, the inherent problem with the NHS is a monopoly, basically. It's a state-funded monopoly. People have terrible experiences with the NHS all the time, and the A&E waiting lists and the millions of people waiting for operations are, something that we almost take for granted. But it doesn't have to be like this. But it needs to be broken up and there needs to be competition. And effectively, that means it has to be privatised. If you don't do that, then you can have an attempt at reforming it. The endless bottom-down reforms. There are things you can do, to be fair. Not every state-run health system has to be equally awful. There are things that the health secretary can do. More beds, for example, she did mention in the speech yesterday. We are desperately short of beds compared to other countries. We're very low on doctors. We need staff, and we need hospitals, and we need beds, and we have enough money for all those things. It's a very well funded healthcare service now, despite what you may hear from many people on the left. It's one of the best funded health services in the world. But for some reason, we just don't have the doctors, we don't have the nurses, we certainly don't have the beds. We're way below the OECD average, and there's quite a few poor countries in the OECD. And I don't know why that is. You'd think if you were constantly short-staffed, then you wouldn't require such a big budget, but they find ways of spending the money somehow.
She said that we would have the equivalent of 7,000 more beds this winter. What does she mean by that?
I've no idea what that means. Maybe it's
OK, we can try and work that out between us. I'll ask
something.
Ben Habib. He knows the answer to everything in just a moment. I just thought it was a choice of language was a little bit ambiguous when she said we'll have the equivalent of 7,000 beds. Is it 7,000 beds or is it the equivalent of? So we will work that out. She also, I think, Chris, brought to it her personal experience. She said she had a 9-hour wait in the NHS, in A&E, and in the end she went to a different hospital. I think people want to hear those sorts of real-life stories from politicians at the moment, don't they, to say that they do walk in our shoes?
I guess so. I mean, most people have got stories of their own. Most people, I would say, have good and bad stories about the NHS, but
Yeah.
you know, a significant number of bad stories, and in many cases, really horrific stories,
OK,
particularly
all right,
with regards
Chris,
to A&E in the last couple of years.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are up against the clock today because the Prime Minister's waiting. I'm sure she won't even wait for you, Chris Snowdon. But thank you very much for joining us. We're going to a quick break. After this, Suella Braverman talking about the crossings. Haven't we heard it all before? See you in a minute.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me. This is Bev Turner on GB News as we wait for Liz Truss to take to the stage at the Tory party conference. We are live on your TV, radio and online. Now, migrants crossing the Channel could face a ban on seeking asylum under pretty punchy new rules proposed by the Home Secretary. Speaking yesterday, Suella Braverman said that her goal was to cut net migration. Let's have a listen.
Now, I backed Brexit because I wanted Britain to have control over our migration and to cut overall numbers. Brexit was meant to give us a say on how we determine our own migration policy.
Really was a very good speech, which hit the notes for a lot of people, particularly the audience there. They were applauding about every 20 seconds, which was quite annoying to watch, to be honest. Let's have a hear now of what Alp Mehmet, chair of Migration Watch UK, thought of it. Good morning, Alp. Lovely to see you again. So, in a nutshell, what did you think? How did she do on the topic that you feel so strongly about?
I think that was probably the best Home Secretary speech at a conference for 10 years. It really was excellent. You had the impression that here's a woman, here's a lady who actually gets it. And it's not just about illegal immigration, it's about overall immigration as well. She didn't overpromise. She warned that it would take time. I think that, frankly, if she remains as Home Secretary, we've finally got someone who's going to tackle both illegal immigration and legal immigration, which is running at way record levels still, and I think needs to be gripped in a way that will reduce it. And she said she will do that. I welcome it.
It didn't go down brilliantly with some parts of the British media. It didn't go down brilliantly with some people on social media who were accusing her, all the old cliches, she's racist, it's OK for her, her family migrated here, and then she's pulled up the drawbridge. How strong is she going to have to be, Alp, to drown out some of that noise and concentrate on the job she has to do?
She's a second-generation immigrant. I am a first-generation immigrant. Frankly, you could argue that argument that if you are a foreigner or if you're an immigrant, you shouldn't have views that run counter to what the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the SNP hold. That's just nonsense, frankly, and I regard it as racist that we shouldn't have these views. We're not saying no immigration. We're saying that it should be sensible immigration. That's all she was saying. And I believe that she will actually tackle the both legal and illegal in the proper way and in the right areas. I've got a great deal of hope for her. I think she's good news.
Her own legal background as a lawyer will put her in very good stead, will it not? Do you think, though, Alp, you would have liked to have seen her put some timescales on this and some sort of chronology? As you say, she was very clear that it isn't going to be easy and it's not going to happen overnight. But would you have liked to see her say, you know what, I'm going to have a handle on this in 6 months, in a year, something like that?
Well, if that happens, great. I'd much rather she said, this is what I'm going to do, rather than set herself a target which may or may not be kept. I really think that over-promising was one of her predecessors' faults. Over-promising time and time again, and then very clearly not achieving what she had set out to achieve. And it was the same with the tens of thousands, going back to Theresa May's time as Home Secretary. Really, the media, immediately she said, we're going to, and in fact, it was David Cameron who said, no ifs and buts, we're going to bring it down to tens of thousands. Well, we had several elections, general elections, and it didn't happen. And people get frustrated. And that, I think, she has quite wisely avoided.
OK, thank you, Alp. It is a good start. Let's see how she goes. Alp Mehmet there from Migration Watch UK. Now, in her speech, which we will bring to you live very shortly, Prime Minister Liz Truss is expected to attack what she calls an anti-growth coalition who oppose her plans. And yesterday, our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, sat down for an exclusive interview with Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, who admitted that the mini-budget delivery could have been better.
A very quick time that we did it. And also you've got to remember the context. I mean, what was extraordinary about that month was that we had a new government and also we had the sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So we had a nation in mourning. And then literally, I think 4 days after the funeral, we had the mini-budget. It was high speed, high pressure environment. And we could have got, as David Cameron used to say, prepared the pitch a bit better.
So let's speak to our economics and business editor now, Liam Halligan, who is on the money. Well, he might be on the money, but it looks like he's in the wallet right now. There you are, Liam. Lovely to see you.
How are you doing? Am, Bev.
Are
nice
you exhausted?
To see you.
Are you exhausted after a few days in conference? And also, let me ask you this, right? The Organisation of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, right, is an intergovernmental organisation of 13 countries. This meeting is taking place today. Tell us a bit more about that, because the UAE Energy Minister has said, hasn't he, that we know that recession is affecting oil supply and demand. What next? This is important.
Well, you'll be pleased to know, Bev, I'm not exhausted. I'm absolutely fine after a couple of weeks of Labour conference and now Conservative conference. You mentioned that OPEC meeting. So OPEC is the world's energy exporting cartel, a group of countries that export oil that basically rig the market to try and influence oil prices, keeping oil off global markets to push prices up so they make more profit. OPEC controls about 40% of the world's oil supply. It controls about 80% of the world's oil reserves. And in Vienna today, those OPEC ministers are meeting along with the Russians. They are not part of OPEC, but they work with OPEC. So we may see oil prices going up, which won't be good news when you think about petrol prices. If you want to fill up your car or your van, oil prices have come down from about $120 a barrel 3 months ago to about $90 now. That's still quite high by historic standards, but it looks like OPEC wants to push them up a bit more. And that's bad news for people across the UK. It's also pretty awkward for Liz Truss as she moves to give her keynote conference speech, her first conference speech as Prime Minister, as party leader, because it makes that economic backdrop, which really is dominating politics now and will continue to dominate politics for months and years to come, it makes that economic backdrop a little bit more worrying.
We've been hearing about the train strikes, meaning that a lot of people went home from conference, Liam, yesterday. Does it seem quieter there today? Is it going to be an empty auditorium for her? And how confident do you think she might be feeling today?
Well, I had dinner along with some GB News colleagues with some senior Tories MPs and indeed with some cabinet ministers last night. And it's clear that there are fewer Tory MPs here than there ordinarily would be. I think that's partly because there's no other way to say this. Liz Truss did not get a ringing endorsement as party leader from those Conservative MPs. Only just over a third of the parliamentary party voted for her, of course, because there was a three-way runoff with Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt as well. Rishi Sunak and a lot of his supporters aren't here, so there aren't that many MPs at Tory conference. And as you say, Bev, rightly, because the RMT rail union, in their wisdom, has decided to stage one of their strikes on the final day of Conservative conference, it means quite a lot of people will have gone home early. Even the GB News team, Bev, we're having to hire a minibus.
Oh, everybody gets affected. Liam, lovely to see you. Enjoy the rest of the day, and no doubt you will be letting us know what you think of Liz Truss's speech in just a little while. Now, another key bit of the Home Secretary's speech yesterday was her call for police forces to stick to doing policing. Radical, I know. Let's have a listen to what she said.
It's very easy to say that the culture wars are a distraction. But make no mistake, the left are attacking our profound elemental values, wanting to replace them with the poison of identity politics. And when this poison seeps into the public sphere, it distracts our public servants from doing their real job. That philosophy dominates the Labour Party, whatever Sir Keir Starmer pretends. And that's why it's not only wrong for the police to take the knee, it is wrong for them to join in with political demonstrations. It is wrong for biologically male police officers to strip search female suspects. And it's not just that pandering to identity politics is a huge waste of time. They need to stick to catching the bad guys. Now, those who dismiss political correctness as a conservative obsession, I say this. I say visit Rochdale, visit Telford. The grooming gang scandal is a stain on this country, and it's what happens when political correctness becomes more important than criminal justice. More PCs, less PC.
The poison of identity politics, Ben Habib. She really went there, didn't she?
She did, and she was quite right to do it. You know, when you have elected politicians championing what they call positive discrimination, effectively what they're doing is being racist, because they're saying that they want, if you take Sadiq Khan, for example, he wants 40% of the police force to be of ethnic minorities. That is a racist policy. What he should be saying is he wants the best policemen for the Met, whatever their colour, religious beliefs and sexual preferences. That's the correct approach. You should be utterly ethnically blind when you employ someone in the police force or indeed any other institution that, you know, is part of the governance of this country.
Is that because we've achieved parity with race and identity, or is it because we never needed it in the first place? Do you know what I mean by that? So I was listening to her and thinking about the days of Tony Blair and thinking when identity politics started to come into our normal everyday lexicon of how important it was. And it was important because we did have racist institutions and we did have discrimination. But am I wrong to talk about it in the past tense? Because some people would say we still have it.
Well, you know, I'm half English and half Pakistani. My mother's blonde, blue-eyed, my father's from Punjab. And I came to this country as a 13-year-old in 1979. Often in 1979, as I walked down the street, people would say, you know, Paki to me. But, you know, funny enough, I never... And that was a kind of everyday occurrence. But I never experienced racism in any institution I attended. And I never felt in my life that I was held back because I'm brown. But
some people do, though.
Yeah, some people do. But the way, in my view, the very simplistic approach I take is that you don't get over that by promoting racial minorities. You do it by neutering the debate.
We have to move on, Ben.
Yeah.
Right, don't go anywhere. We're going to bring you live coverage of the Prime Minister's speech in just a moment.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning. Thank you for tuning into GB News here, whether you're watching us on the telly or you're listening on your radio or you've got the nifty little app on your phone. Thank you for joining us. I am Bev Turner. I'm here for the next hour, and in this hour we're going to be hearing from Prime Minister Liz Truss. She's going to deliver her speech. There we are. We are looking at the pictures of a very blue stage with a very dark auditorium, getting Britain moving, they say. Well, we will be moving onto that stage very shortly, and we'll be bringing you all of that, and then we will be analysing it in the studio with Brexit mega brain and business Ben Habib. We're also going to be talking about the rail strikes, I think. Yep, we're going to be talking about the rail strikes. They are causing travel problems for many. ASLEF, the train drivers' union members, they work for 13 train operators. They are walking out for 24 hours as part of a long-running dispute over pay. We're going to be speaking to our reporters who are on the picket lines around the country. And if we have time, depending on how long Liz Truss chooses to take of our time this morning, we're going to be looking at Brazil's election. It's going into a second round in which the left-winger, Luiz Lula da Silva, will face far-right, as they say, I'm not sure I agree with that definition, President Bolsonaro. With almost all the votes counted, Lula won 48% against Bolsonaro's 43%, a much closer and controversial result than the opinion polls suggested. I'm going to be talking to an expert on Brazilian politics about what that might all mean. All of that coming up and much more across the programme, and your views as well. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Right, we are just awaiting the Prime Minister's closing speech at the Conservative Party conference. We're going to be bringing you that live in just a moment. With me in the studio, we are looking at the stage. With me in the studio for the rest of the hour is former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Now, I think there are lots of men in suits, Ben Habib, walking into the auditorium. I'm not quite sure from here whether we can see who we're looking at, but presumably this is the Cabinet taking to the front row.
I think it is, yeah.
I believe so. This is the Cabinet taking their seats along the front row. And just tell us what's happening here, Ben. And what do you think she can do in this next half an hour speech to win over the public?
Well, I think she needs to lay out her vision again. She needs to be very clear about why she's taking the steps that she's taking and the importance for turning this 12-year of Conservative failed Treasury orthodoxy on its head. She needs to explain the other steps that she's going to take, as Prime Minister, including some of the things that Suella had mentioned in terms of curbing immigration, which is a big issue for the electorate. If she's speaking over the heads of disaffected Tory MPs to the electorate, she needs to talk to the electorate about things that matter to them. So I think migration is an issue. I think she should address the NHS. Waiting lists for the NHS are massive at the moment, compared to where they were pre-pandemic. And then, of course, there's the whole issue about benefits, which has raised its ugly head again in opposition to Liz Truss's desire not to increase benefit payments by more than the average increase in earnings. And, I think she's got to tackle these difficult issues. She's got to be practical. She's got to convey the rationale behind them. And if she can do that, the electorate isn't stupid. They understand what's going on. They'll get it. And, I think she'll gain their support. And she just needs to ignore Rishi Sunak, anti-people.
The ghost of.
Yeah, the ghost of Rishi Sunak in her parliamentary party.
I think, Ben, with these speeches, sometimes the most interesting things are what they don't say. And I wonder what she will avoid touching upon today. Some of the very controversial issues. I don't know whether she may not go there with the identity politics like Suella Braverman did. I think, in a way, she needs to keep her powder dry on a lot of things that might prove to be too controversial.
Yeah, well, I mean, Suella did the job for her. And, of course, it's much easier for Suella to do it because Suella is of an ethnic minority. And it sounds daft that in order to be able to promote racial equality, you have to now be from a racial minority. Yeah. That white people actually can't feel confident enough to speak about it. But Suella did it, and so she doesn't need to go there. You're quite right. She can stick to the main issues.
We're just looking at the pictures here. I think that's Penny Mordaunt chatting on the front row. Nadeem Zahawi, who, of course, we kind of forget. A lot of the routes we've got to now lead back to him and Sajid Javid when they kicked out Boris.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were front and centre on that, weren't they? And Sajid Javid tried as best he could to put the knife in Parliament, his sort of equivalent of the Geoffrey Howe moment. I think that's what he was going for. I thought it was a pretty substandard, suboptimal speech, but anyway, it had the desired effect. Boris Johnson's gone. We've got Liz Truss. Thankfully, we haven't got Rishi Sunak. I think the country has an opportunity to get back on its feet under Liz Truss with this new vision. Look, the fact is, we couldn't go on doing more of the same, could we? What was being done wasn't working, so we had to pivot. There's Chris Heaton-Harris there in the second row.
Yeah.
Now, he's quite an interesting character for me because he's the new Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and he's a Brexiteer. And I thought he was going to be quite strong on the Union and bringing Northern Ireland back in, back into the United Kingdom. But it seems that he's been captured by the Northern Ireland office, and his first trip was to the Republic to meet Simon Coveney, the Foreign Minister for the Republic of Ireland, who is, if anyone could be an enemy of the integrity of the United Kingdom, Simon Coveney is. So it was very disappointing to see Chris Heaton-Harris, go there. And Steve Baker, the Minister of State for Northern Ireland, apologising to the EU. I'm not sure where that came from. Steve used to be head of the ERG, so I'd expect him to take a much tougher line.
They're starting to roll some videos on stage here. They are now showing a video of Liz Truss, pictures of the United Kingdom. I think we're going to take you live now to the conference, and let's hear what she has to say.
We all have to get a job. Like, I saw the reports in the media talking about bills at £5,000 and £6,000, and I just thought this isn't right. It was just very, very important that people did not have to worry anymore about this winter and next winter. I didn't think it was right for individuals and households to face that cost and businesses to face that cost. I think it's right that we took a decision as a country that we were going to make sure that the price was reasonable, the energy price guarantee. But at the same time, we also need to sort out the future so we're never in that position again, which is why we are negotiating new long-term contracts. We're opening up more gas fields in the North Sea.
So we're just watching images from the conference here. A bit unusual, Ben Habib, that they're introducing her with a video of herself before she gets on stage. That seems a little bit left of centre, doesn't it?
Well, it might be that she's, making some of her salient points before having to get up. I suppose it makes her job marginally easier, doesn't it? I'm glad you mentioned energy there. One of the reasons the US can, with impunity, increase its interest rates is because it is energy independent.
Yes.
And it can go on doing it, and it's sucking the lifeblood out of the global economy. All the capital is being sucked back to the US because it's energy independent. And I hope Liz makes a real... one of the things she must talk about in her speech is energy. How are we going to get out of this hole into which 25 years of negligent energy policy has put us? The last time we built a nuclear power station in this country was 1995. We've got to get on the front foot with that. We've closed down storage facilities for gas. Gas is actually quite a green fuel, relatively speaking. It's now been vilified by the, climate emergency lot. But we've got oodles of gas in the North Sea.
Yeah.
And fracking aside, we should be looking at the North Sea and extracting whatever we can.
Yeah. Oh, well, they're introducing her, I think, on stage with M People, a 90s track there, or early 2000s, moving on up. So Liz Truss is taken to the lectern in her lovely rust-coloured dress.
My friends, it's great to be with you here in Birmingham. It's fantastic to see the cranes across the skyline building new buildings, the busy trams coursing down the streets, and the bull standing proudly at the heart of Birmingham. My friends, this is what a city with a Tory mayor looks like. positive, it's enterprising, it's successful, and Andy Street is a human dynamo, delivering for the people of Birmingham. And our Teesside Mayor, Ben Houchin, is also delivering new jobs and investment. This is what modern conservatism looks like. Let's get Tory mayors elected in London, in Manchester, in West Yorkshire, and right across our great country. We gather at a vital time for the United Kingdom. These are stormy days. Together, we've mourned the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the rock on which modern Britain was built. We're now in a new era under King Charles III. We're dealing with the global economic crisis caused by COVID and by Putin's appalling war in Ukraine. In these tough times, we need to step up. I'm determined to get Britain moving, to get us through the tempest, and to put us on a stronger footing as a nation. I'm driven in this mission by my firm belief in the British people. I believe that you know best how to spend your own money, to get on in life, and to realise your ambitions. My friends, that is what conservatism is about. It's a belief in freedom, in fair play, and the great potential of the British people. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, or what to think, or how to live your life. I'm not interested in how many 2-for-1 offers you buy at the supermarket, or how you spend your spare time, or in virtue signalling. I'm not interested in just talking about things, but actually in doing things. What I'm interested in is your hopes and fears that you feel every day. Can you get a good job locally? Is it safe to walk down the high street late at night? Can you get a doctor's appointment? I know how you feel because I have the same hopes and fears. I want what you want. I've fought to get where I am today. I've fought to get jobs, to get pay rises, and get on the housing ladder. I've juggled my career with raising 2 wonderful daughters. I know how it feels to have your potential dismissed by those who think they know better. I remember as a young girl being presented on a plane with a junior air hostess badge. Meanwhile, my brothers were given junior pilot badges. It wasn't the only time in my life that I've been treated differently for being female or for not fitting in. It made me angry, and it made me determined. Determined to change things so other people didn't feel the same way. I remember growing up in Leeds, where I saw too many children being let down by low expectations, let down by a Labour council who were more interested in political correctness than they were in school standards. But I was lucky to have been brought up in a family that cared about education. They taught me the value of hard work and enterprise. And I stand here today as the first Prime Minister of our country to have gone to a comprehensive school. That taught me 2 things. One is that we have huge talent across our country, and 2, that we're not making enough of it. This is a great country. I'm so proud of who we are and what we stand for. But I know that we can do better, and I know that we must do better. And that's why I entered politics. I want to live in a country where hard work's rewarded, where women can walk home safely at night, and where our children have a better future. To deliver this, we need to get Britain moving. We cannot have any more drift and delay at this vital time. Let's remember where we were when I entered Downing Street. Average energy bills were predicted to soar above £6,000 a year. We faced the highest tax burden that our country had had for 70 years. And we were told that we could do nothing about it. I didn't accept that things had to be that way. I knew that inaction would be unconscionable. Families would have been unable to heat their homes. Businesses would have gone bust. Jobs would have been lost. And we would have worse public services, including the NHS. I couldn't allow this to happen. I refused to consign our great country to decline. And that's why I promised on entering Downing Street to act. Let's get them removed. Later on in my speech, my friends, I'm going to talk about the anti-growth coalition. But I think they arrived in the hall a bit too early. They were meant to come later on. So we'll get on to them. We'll get on to them in a few minutes. But what we did is we acted. We made sure that the typical household energy bill shouldn't be more than around £2,500 a year this winter and next. We followed up with immediate action to support businesses over the winter. We're determined to shield people from astronomically high bills. So much so that we are doing more in this country to protect people from the energy crisis than any other country in Europe. Our response to the energy crisis was the biggest part of our mini-budget. It was the biggest part for a good reason, because we had to do it. But it's not the only challenge we face. For too long, our economy hasn't grown as strongly as it should have done. I know what it's like to live somewhere that isn't feeling the benefits of economic growth. I grew up in Paisley and in Leeds in the 80s and 90s. I've seen the boarded up shops. I've seen people left with no hope, turning to drugs. I've seen families struggling to put food on the table. Low growth isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. Low growth means lower wages, fewer opportunities, and less money to spend on the things that make life better. It means our country falling behind other countries, including those who threaten our way of life. And it means the parts of our country that I really care about falling even further behind. That is why we must level up our country in a conservative way, ensuring everywhere, everyone can get on. Conference, it's wrong to invest only in the places that are thriving, as economic models often have it. We need to fund the furthest behind first. And for too long, the political debate has been dominated by the argument about how we distribute a limited economic pie. Instead, we need to grow the pie so that everyone gets a bigger slice. That is why I'm determined to take a new approach and break us out of this high-tax, low-growth cycle. And that's what our plan is about. It's about getting the economy growing and rebuilding Britain through reform. The scale of this challenge is immense. War in Europe for the first time in a generation, a more uncertain world in the aftermath of COVID, and a global economic crisis. That is why, in Britain, we need to do things differently. We need to step up. As the last few weeks have shown, it will be difficult. Whenever there's change, there is disruption. And not everybody will be in favour of change, but everyone will benefit from the result. A growing economy and a better future. That is what we have a clear plan to deliver. I have 3 priorities for our economy: growth, growth, and growth. Growth means more money in people's pockets. It means businesses creating new jobs. Growth means people can feel secure and they can plan for their future. Fundamentally, growth helps people fulfill their hopes and their dreams. And that's why our dynamic new Chancellor and I will be taking action in 3 areas. First of all, we will lower our tax burden. Over the summer, we had a robust debate, and the Conservative Party will always be the party of low taxes. Cutting taxes is the right thing to do, morally and economically. Morally, because the state doesn't spend its own money. It spends the people's money. Economically, because if people keep more of their own money, they're inspired to do more of what they do best. That's what grows the economy. When the government plays too big a role, people feel smaller. High taxes mean you feel it's less worthwhile working that extra hour, going for a better job, or setting up your own business. That's, my friends, is why we are cutting taxes. We've already cut stamp duty, helping people on the housing ladder, especially first-time buyers. We're reversing the increase in national insurance from next month. And we're keeping corporation tax at 19%, the lowest in the G20. We're also helping 31 million working people by cutting the basic rate of income tax. We need to be internationally competitive, with all our tax rates attracting the best talent. Cutting taxes helps us face the global economic crisis, putting up a sign that Britain is open for business. The fact is that the abolition of the 45p tax rate became a distraction from the major parts of our growth plan. That is why we're no longer proceeding with it. I get it, and I have listened. Secondly, we will keep an iron grip on the nation's finances. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I believe in getting value for the taxpayer. I believe in sound money and a lean state. I remember my shock opening my first paycheck to see how much money the tax man had taken out. I know this feeling is replicated across the country. And that's why we must always be careful with taxpayers' money. It's why this government will always be fiscally responsible. We are in extraordinary times. It would have been wrong not to have proceeded rapidly with our energy and tax plan. I am clear we cannot pave the way to sustainable economic growth without fiscal responsibility. So we will bring down debt as a proportion of our national income. We are seeing rising interest rates worldwide in the wake of Putin's war and COVID. The Federal Reserve has been hiking rates in America and has signalled more rises to come. Inflation is high across the world's major economies. We will do what we can as a government to support homeowners, such as cutting stamp duty. But it's right that interest rates are independently set by the Bank of England and that politicians do not decide on this. The Chancellor and the Governor will keep closely coordinating our monetary and fiscal policy. And the Chancellor and I are in complete lockstep on this. Thirdly, we will drive economic reforms to build our country for a new era. We're taking a new approach based on what's worked before. Previously, we faced barriers to growth like militant unions, nationalised industries, and outdated city regulation. Now we must break down the barriers to growth built up in our system over decades. Decisions take too long. Burdens on businesses are too high. Infrastructure projects get delayed for years and years and years. As a result, we've seen economic growth choked off. Houses haven't been built where they are needed and wanted, and we've become averse as a nation to doing things differently. I love business. I love enterprise. I love people who take responsibility, start their own businesses, and invest. They generate profits, they create new jobs, and they power our success. And I want to see more of that. That's why we will back business to the hilt. We're cutting taxes and we're simplifying red tape to help businesses realise their ambitions. And this is what our new investment zones will do, helping us level up across the country. We're going to be inspired by the great hubs of industry like Bourneville here in the West Midlands. And that's what zones in places like here and around the country will deliver. We want to create the zones in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Now is the time to harness the power of free enterprise to transform our country and ensure that our greatest days lie ahead. This is the United Kingdom at its best, working together and getting our economy growing. And we will face down the separatists who threaten to pull apart our precious union, our family. Next year, we will host the Global Investment Summit. This will show the world's top investors there's nowhere better to invest than the UK. And we're seizing the newfound freedoms outside the European Union. We're the party who got Brexit done, and we will realise on the promise of Brexit. We're building an economy which makes the most of the huge opportunities Brexit offers. By the end of the year, all EU red tape will be consigned to history. Instead, we will ensure that regulation is pro-business and pro-growth. Leaving the EU gives us the chance to do things differently, and we need more of that. That's why over the coming weeks, my team of ministers will set out more about what we're going to do to get Britain moving. We'll make it easier to build homes, to afford childcare, and to get super-fast broadband. We'll help you set up your own business and get a mobile phone signal wherever you are in the country. We are in tough times, but I want you to know that day in, day out, I'm thinking about how we get this country moving. I'm working flat out to make sure people can get through this crisis. So let me be clear, we have your back. That is why the government took decisive action to tackle the energy crisis. It's why we're pushing ahead with our plan for growth. Economic growth makes life better and easier for everyone, and it will level up our country. I know this is what people want to see. Economic growth will mean that we can afford great public services, such as schools, the police, and the NHS. Our fantastic Deputy Prime Minister and Health Secretary will deliver for patients, so they can expect a GP appointment within 2 weeks. She will ensure that those who need urgent care will be seen on the same day. And she will get ambulances out there faster, and she will improve A&E. And she will bust the COVID backlog. That's not all. That's not all. And she will bolster social care so everyone gets the care they need. We are working to put this country on the path to long-term success. That means ensuring we are safe and secure. One of the reasons we're facing this global crisis is because collectively the West did not do enough. We became complacent. We didn't spend enough on defence. We became too dependent on authoritarian regimes for cheap goods and cheap energy. And we did not stand up to Russia early enough. We will make sure this never happens again. So we are taking decisive action to reinforce our energy security. We're opening more gas fields in the North Sea and delivering more renewables and nuclear energy. This is how we will protect the great British environment, deliver on our commitment to net zero, and tackle climate change. We're also taking decisive action by strengthening our borders and beefing up our border force and expanding the Rwanda scheme. Our brilliant new Home Secretary will be bringing forward legislation to make sure that no European judge can overrule us. And while she is acting, meanwhile, the Labour Party has absolutely no plan to tackle illegal immigration. But my friends, we cannot have security at home without security abroad. That's why our tough foreign and defence secretaries are updating the integrated review to make sure we can face down these threats. It's why we're increasing defence spending to 3% of GDP by the end of the decade. This will ensure that our armed forces are ready to tackle new and emerging threats. We're working with our friends and allies to support Ukraine in the face of Putin's brutal war. The brave Ukrainian people aren't just fighting for their security, but for all our security. This is a fight for freedom and democracy around the world. Putin's illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory is just the latest act in his campaign to subvert democracy and violate international law. We should not give in to those who want a deal which trades away Ukrainian land. They are proposing to pay in Ukrainian lives for the illusion of peace. We will stand with our Ukrainian friends, however long it takes. Ukraine can win, Ukraine must win, and Ukraine will win. I know that President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine will welcome our solidarity with them at this very, very difficult time. To take on Russia and other authoritarian regimes, free democracies need strong economies. Economic growth makes us strong at home and strong abroad. And we need an economically sound and secure United Kingdom. And that will mean challenging those who try to stop growth. I will not allow the anti-growth coalition to hold us back. Labour, the Lib Dems, the SNP, the militant unions, the vested interests dressed up as think tanks, the talking heads, the Brexit deniers, Extinction Rebellion, and some of the people we had in the hall earlier. The fact is, they prefer protesting to doing. They prefer talking on Twitter to taking tough decisions. They taxi from North London townhouses to the BBC studio to dismiss anyone challenging the status quo. From broadcast to podcast, they peddle the same old answers. It's always more taxes, more regulation, and more meddling. Wrong, wrong, wrong. We see the anti-growth coalition at work across our country. Keir Starmer wants to put extra taxes on the companies we need to invest in our energy security. And his sticking plaster solution will only last 6 months. He has no long-term plan and no vision for Britain. Mark Drakeford in Wales is cancelling road building projects and refusing to build the M4 relief road. Nicola Sturgeon won't build new nuclear power stations to solve the energy crisis in Scotland. Have these people ever seen a tax rise they don't like? or an industry they don't want to control? They don't understand the British people. They don't understand aspiration. They are prepared to leave our towns and cities facing decline. My friends, does the anti-growth coalition have any idea who pays their wages? It's the people who make things in factories across our country. It's the people who get up at the crack of dawn to go to work. It's the commuters who get trains into towns and cities across our country. I'm thinking of the white van drivers, the hairdressers, the plumbers, the accountants, the IT workers, and millions of others up and down the UK. The anti-growth coalition just doesn't get it. It's because they don't face the same challenges as normal working people. These enemies of enterprise don't know the frustration you feel to see your road blocked by protesters or your trains off due to a strike. In fact, their friends on the hard left tend to be the ones behind the disruption. The anti-growth coalition think that people who stick themselves to trains, roads and buildings are heroes. I say the real heroes are the people who go out to work, take responsibility and aspire to a better life for themselves and their families. And I am on their side. We will build roads, rail, energy and broadband quicker. We will be proudly pro-growth, pro-aspiration and pro-enterprise. That is how we will forge ahead on our long-term path to national success. In this new era, we're taking a new approach. My friends, we're focused on boosting growth and opportunity across our country. This mission will be difficult, but it is necessary. We have no alternative if we want to get our economy moving again. I'm ready to make the hard choices. You can trust me to do what it takes. The status quo is not an option. That is why we can't give in to the voices of decline. We can't give in to those who say Britain can't grow faster. We can't give in to those who say we can't do better. We must stay the course. We're the only party with a clear plan to get Britain moving. We're the only party with the determination to deliver. Together, we can unleash the full potential of our great country. That is how we will build a new Britain for a new era.
Did close in on him quite a bit throughout the speech to see his reaction. She's certainly getting an excellent reaction there in the auditorium. I think she did style out the intervention by Greenpeace at one point. It didn't seem to put her off her stride. As you can see, it was a classic, I would say, Ben Habib, Tory Conservative speech. We should have done word bingo, you and I, as we sat here drinking our tea and coffee and watching that. Growth was the word, deliver, potential. It was a speech about aspiration. I'm going to come to you in just a moment, Ben. We want to go straight back to Birmingham. I think we're going to try and find Tom Harwood in just a minute, see what Tom thought. So Liz Truss and her husband there making their way out of the auditorium. It was a very good response there. If we can talk to Tom up there in Birmingham. Hello, Tom. You know, that is hot off the press. That speech has just finished only a matter of seconds ago. Give me your thoughts.
Yes, and in a moment, those people who were sitting in experiencing the speech will be walking just down this corridor here. We'll grab some of their thoughts in a second, but it does seem like we have some new words to add to our political lexicon here in the United Kingdom. The anti-growth coalition is something that will be referred to again and again by this Prime Minister. Really a seismic point of this speech, setting herself up as the crusader for growth against the vested interests who have never seen a tax rise they do not like, in the Prime Minister's words. That is really the dichotomy that the Prime Minister was trying to set out there. Her crusade for growth, trying to get this country moving, up on its feet and industry booming, and pointing out all of those who have done so much to dampen growth prospects in this country in recent decades, perhaps brilliantly illustrated by those couple of protesters about a third of the way through the speech, brilliantly illustrating that anti-growth coalition with their words. Let's see if we can get some words from some members now. Sir, you were there in the speech. What did you make of it?
Brilliant. She showed she knows what she's talking about. She got them in her hand after about 5 minutes, and then she just grew and grew and grew. There's not many gets that many standing ovations.
What did you think when you were going into this speech? Liz Truss isn't known for being the best orator. Did she confound your expectations?
She did better than I thought she'd ever do. To be fair, yeah. She's always been this, shrinking violet. She's not really sure of herself. And then I honestly do believe she'll be a good Prime Minister. I do, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your thoughts, sir. Really good to get them. Let's see if we can get some more thoughts from some more people in the room. Excuse me, sir, what did you make of the speech?
I think she did very well, yeah. No cheese speech moments. It was really good. I was a bit worried, but no, I think she did a great job, a really good job. I'm inspired by it, so that's what she needed to do, and she did it. That was great.
And what do you make of the protesters?
Well, I think they helped her. I think they brought the conference to her. We all stood up and cheered, carry on, Liz, and I think she did well because of it. And I think it helped her.
I felt exactly the same. Inspiration and lifting the conference which was needed. It's not going to be easy. Let's get real here. Yeah. It's going to be a slow journey, but we're going to get there with Liz.
Well, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we can get some more thoughts from people in the room. Excuse me, what did you make of the speech?
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Much better than unexpected. Before I was a bit worried, but now I feel very reassured. And she's strong and positive. And the ministers she's got behind her are brilliant. They are first-class ministers. You couldn't get them better. Really couldn't.
And what did you make of it?
Well, I'm afraid I pretty much agree. I was concerned about this U-turn and so on, but she's dealt with it, and her policies are strong if we'll just let her get on with it.
And this anti-growth coalition, a new word to add to our political lexicon, is it going to stick?
Well, it's quite funny, isn't it? We all know what it means. It could do. New catchphrase.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you for taking the time. Excuse me, sir, what did you make of the speech?
Oh, amazing. I really enjoyed it. It was very positive, very upbeat, and very excited. And also that interjunction by the eco-activist, I thought she handled very well, very calmly, and the response from the audience was amazing. So I couldn't be happier. Very happy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Let's see if we can get some more words for some more people who were there in the room. Excuse me, sir, what did you make of it?
Very fantastic. In fact, I was sitting 2 doors away from the people, the protesters. So I grabbed the first flag off them, and then they immediately unveiled another flag. And I was grabbing that off them, and the security came.
Well, we have it here. We're talking to the gentleman who grabbed the flag. Did you have any instinct that these people were about to stand up?
No, I was talking to the guy next to me, who was from Leicester Conservatives, I think, and then there was these two women who didn't say anything to anybody, because I asked the people at the back, I said, did you notice anything funny about those people? And they said, no, they're just absolutely insignificant. So how they got a pass, I don't know. But anyway, at least we grabbed the flag off them.
And to some extent, that sort of helped Liz Truss put the room behind her. What did you make of her response?
Well, it was very good, because, you know, everybody was standing up and saying, you know, grab them and what have you, and then everybody was clapping Liz, and she said, yes, I'm going to say something about those sort of people later in the speech.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. Should we get some... Thank you. Should we get some more reaction here? What did you make, firstly of all, to Liz Truss's reaction to these protesters?
Didn't she carry on well? She was so calm. It didn't faze her at all, and it did her the world of good.
She was great. She was calm, she was collected, she waited for it to finish. Yes, she didn't run off crying or anything. She was wonderful. I'm very impressed.
To some extent, showing the challenges she's up against, showing the challenges the country's faced from the people that have tried to stop energy independence, tried to stop economic growth. Pretty illustrative of what she's trying to deliver.
She had the answers for everything. It didn't matter. And the way she flowed onto each subject was just remarkable. She was absolutely amazing, and she certainly ran for the women.
I'm really proud of her and of being here to see her. It was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Let's see if we can just get one or two more little reactions there. Excuse me, sir, what did you make of the speech?
Yeah, we're quite good. Enjoyed it. Yeah, cheers.
Right then. Short but sweet. What did you make of the speech, sir?
I thought that was the best speech Liz has given so far. It gives us good hopes for the future. I think if the MPs get behind her now, we've got a good chance in the next election. We've got 2 years to bring it round, and that was a good first step for her.
And you reckon the room was uniting behind her there?
I think so. There was quite a few standing ovations at different parts. We were all very pleased to hear the reaffirmed defence for Ukraine, and I think the agenda is a too conservative one, so excited for the future.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us. Just a flavour there from the reaction from the room. Overwhelmingly positive from those we've spoken to so far. Back to you.
Thank you, Tom. You are brilliant. I love the enthusiasm that Tom Harwood brings to these occasions, don't you, Ben Habib? Well done, Tom. Well, enthusiastic up there in Birmingham as well. I mean, obviously, it's a room of Conservative Party members and voters. They're going to say they love her. But there was quite a lot in there that was just good old-fashioned Tory ideology.
It was a very solid speech. You know, everyone was teeing her up for a failure, weren't they? Everyone wanted, or the mainstream media and her detractors wanted a wooden performance. They wanted her to have her cheese moment. And actually, she was tested by those Greenpeace, what do you call them? Not rioters.
Protesters.
Protesters. And she leveraged off it. She came back stronger. And the anti-growth coalition is going to be part of the political lexicon going forward now. Tom's absolutely right about it. But, you know, she had to win the membership, and there wasn't a single negative comment made about her from the membership as they walked out of the auditorium. So I think that was a really good performance. It's going to be difficult now for people like Michael Gove to go on being so negative. They must see the positive side of Liz Truss, coming through in that speech. She explained the need to cut taxes extremely well, how it is a critical component of creating aspiration so that the pie can be grown as opposed to just redistributing an ever smaller pie.
Yeah.
You know, that's a critical thing to understand. She explained deregulation and the importance behind deregulation, the importance behind energy independence. You know, I think she nailed all the main things. She didn't talk about strikes a lot. She had a kind of nod towards it.
Yes, because I said it would be interesting to see what she doesn't say, and she didn't mention the strikes, actually, because I think, well, she mentioned it a little bit, but not in that much detail. We've had so much to talk about that I've barely managed to get to your views at home as well, of what you thought about it, but Gloria and Mark will be carrying on from here, so I'm sure I will. Do you know what I'll do? I'll hand over your messages to them, and they can read them out. Ben Habib, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much. I will be back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Enjoy the rest of your day. That is it from us. Here is the weather, I think, next.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. An area of rain moves east, accompanied by strong winds. Brighter skies follow, but further showers for many areas, particularly towards the northwest. Low pressure in charge at the moment, that low pressure sitting towards Iceland, and a weather front is currently crossing the country. Now that's containing some persistent rain, a lot of cloud as well, and it's accompanied by gusty winds as it pushes into the Midlands, southern parts of England, East Anglia and the southeast by the afternoon. It does brighten up towards the north and the west, but a fair number of showers following and some more persistent rain at times for the likes of northern England and southwest Scotland. Feeling fresher behind the front, but actually it's relatively mild ahead of it. Temperatures falling away as that front crosses the country because it is a cold front. It's introducing cooler air. As we head into the evening then, clearer skies follow that area of rain. And actually for much of England and Wales, it is a largely clear and dry night. The wind's starting to ease, and in some sheltered spots, it's going to turn chillier compared with the last couple of nights. Temperatures into the mid or even low single figures. But for Scotland, for the far north of England and for Northern Ireland, it stays showery overnight. It stays breezy as well, and those showers continue during Thursday morning. There'll be further showers pushing into North Wales and North West England, perhaps some more persistent rain at times as well. Towards the south and the southeast, it stays largely dry with some sunny spells and feeling warm in that sunshine, 19 Celsius, but cooler further northwest where we've got those showers coming in and that gusty wind as well. Some more persistent rain